Assault your enemies with Plague and Corruption as you tap into the most gruesome abilities available in VRising. Hey there friends, it's Codiak here, welcome back to Legacy Gaming. Today, we're taking a deep dive into Unholy abilities, what they are, how you unlock them, and ultimately, if they're any good. As always, when doing a ranking video here on the channel, I like to start by making it crystal clear. This type of content, these rankings, are subjective. What we think is bad or good may not be what you think is bad or good, and that's fine. We always appreciate you guys letting us know in the comments, and in many cases, you actually change our minds on a ranking. So let's just start there on the same page. Now, to do a proper rankings video, at least in our eyes, you have to establish some ground rules, something to keep us honest about how and why we're ranking things the way that we did. For our VRising series, we're keeping things relatively simple, focusing on three key areas: effectiveness in PvE, effectiveness in PvP, and utility. All of the abilities are running through that filter and hopefully allows us to more accurately characterize everything we're talking about. The goal is for us to reveal a rank and you guys to agree, or at least be close. So with that disclaimer out of the way and the ground rules established, let's dive in to the rankings. Our first ability, Corpse Explosion, gives players their first taste of the Unholy skill tree. When triggered, players can raise a pile of bones below that explodes at a targeted location, dealing 125% magic damage and applying a fading snare that lasts 1 second. To unlock this ability, players will need to kill Goreswine the Ravager in the southern part of Farbane Woods. Goreswine does patrol between the desecrated graveyard and the infested graveyard, so you might have to check multiple places to track him down. As an introductory move, Corpse Explosion is okay, but other than introducing players to the Unholy skill tree, it falls pretty flat in terms of effectiveness. While it is one of a small handful of true AoE abilities, the delay between cast and impact just leaves too much room for error. In both PvE and PvP, enemies can simply dodge the ability, and because of the lackluster 125% damage, it's hard to justify using one of your precious ability slots on such a subpar move. On paper, it seems like an okay ability, but in practice, there are just too many flaws, which is why it's getting a D rank. The next ability, Pestilence, allows players to launch a wave of 3 unholy projectiles that each deal 40% magic damage, knocks targets back, and inflicts Amplify that increases damage taken by 25% for 5 seconds. To unlock Pestilence, players will need to kill the V-Blood unit Nikolaus the Fallen. He is located at the top of the Forgotten Cemetery in central Farbane Woods. A word of warning, this boss summons a ton of minor skeletons to aid in the fight and proves to be one of the earlier challenges when it comes to V-Blood units. Pestilence succeeds where Corpse Explosion fails for one key reason: the damage amp associated with the ability. That extra 25% damage taken debuff you can apply to enemies is a game changer and makes Pestilence much more valuable as an ability. Sadly, that's really the only strong aspect of the move. The damage is lacking, and unless you're in melee range and use the ability as a shotgun, you'll rarely hit all 3 projectiles on a single target. Still, if you can capitalize on the damage amp and understand how best to use Pestilence to make it work in combat, the ability is decent enough, which is why it's getting a B rank. Our next ability, Purgatory, allows players to call down a pillar of energy that slows enemies in an area for 1 second and heals allies for 40% of the player's spell power. After 1.2 seconds, the pillar erupts in a powerful burst of energy, dealing 75% magic damage to enemies and healing allies for 75% of your spell power. To unlock Purgatory, players will need to defeat Christina the Sun Priestess, who's found patrolling around Dawnbreak Village in the Dunley farmlands. It's best to track her using the Blood Altar, as she moves around quite a bit and is difficult to locate. Hands down, Purgatory is one of the best abilities in VRising, full stop. There are a few things at play here. First is the healing component. In late game PvE encounters and pretty much all PvP encounters, this is going to be a huge factor in your success. Not only do you get healed during the initial cast, but you also catch it again once the ability's explosion triggers. That initial cast is also when the slow effect is applied, which provides players with pretty remarkable utility in PvP encounters. Purgatory also features a decent size AoE and an okay damage component, which helps round it out. Top to bottom, this is one of the most fully realized abilities in the game, which is why Purgatory is getting an S rank. The next ability is quite different, but still interesting. When cast, Unstable Mosquito summons a mosquito that chases down an enemy and explodes after 1 second. This deals 60% magic damage in an area and inflicts Amplify that increases damage taken by 25% for 5 seconds. To unlock Unstable Mosquito, players need to kill the V-Blood unit, Motka, the Curse Weaver, and the Cursed Forest. She's one of the final bosses currently in the game and does require quite a bit of skill to knock off. Now I applaud Stunlock for doing something a bit different with Unstable Mosquito. It's not a perfect ability, but it's interesting, and that at least gives us something to talk about. There are a few issues here. The first is that the explosion is delayed, which causes problems if the target isn't frozen or incapacitated. That being said, in conjunction with its short range, it's a pretty easy ability to dodge in PvP. There are some one-shot builds that use Unstable Mosquito in conjunction with a stun freeze combo to quickly kill off a target, but that's a pretty niche scenario. One positive is that the ability does feature a 25% damage amp and comes with 2 charges, which does bump it up a notch in our eyes. All that taken into account, Unstable Mosquito is slightly above average, which is why it's getting a B rank. Next on the list is Ward of the Damned, which increases movement speed by 10% and blocks melee and projectile attacks in front of you for 2 seconds. Each absorbed attack summons a skeleton, and enemy attackers are knocked backwards. This ability is also unlocked when you defeat Nikolaus the Fallen in the Forgotten Cemetery in Farbane Woods. Shields are powerful in VRising, so let's get that out of the way right now. But they're not all created equal. In this case, Ward of the Damned is most effective when used in a high mob density situation. The more attacks that sink into that 2-second shield, the more skeleton soldiers you get fighting on your side, and that's part of the allure of the ability. Ward of the Damned also has a relatively low cooldown, which allows you to use it more frequently, which is great in PvP when dealing with aggressive attackers. Sadly, if a player has any modicum of self-control, the chance of this shield playing a huge factor in a PvP encounter falls quite a bit. Also consider that the skeleton soldiers don't really factor into PvP, so we're really only looking at a few strong strengths as well as some obvious weaknesses. That being said, shields are still decently strong in the game, and to that end, we're giving Ward of the Damned a B rank. Moving down to our travel skill, Veil of Bones. This allows players to dash towards a direction, eluding nearby enemies for 2.2 seconds. Your next attack launches a projectile that deals 25% magic damage, bouncing up to 4 targets and inflicting Amplify that increases damage taken by 25% for 5 seconds. Veil of Bones is the second ability unlocked when players defeat Goreswine the Ravager. In my opinion, Veil of Bones is one of the better travel skills in the game. What it boils down to is simply this. The projectile you get from landing your first hit after the dash bounces to 4 targets, applying that damage amp debuff, which might be one of the most efficient ways to spread it around. Thinking through some of the scenarios where multiple enemies might be a problem, this is a huge selling point for the ability. You do have to land that first hit, and if you miss, you lose out on the effect, but that alone makes Veil of Bones stand out as a superb ability, which is why it's getting an A rank. Moving on to the first of 2 Unholy ultimate abilities. Summon Fallen Angel allows you to summon an avatar to fight by you for 15 seconds. Attacks made by the Fallen Angel inflict Amplify that increases damage taken by 25%. To unlock this ability, you need to defeat Solaris the Immaculate, the final V-Blood unit currently in VRising. Summons are always an interesting topic in video games. Some players love them, others hate them, but it always comes back to a few things. 1, is the AI competent enough, and 2, is their value. Actual value summoning a minion over using a more direct ability. In this case, I think Stunlock does a good job making the Fallen Angel feel impactful. 15 seconds is a very generous ultimate timer compared to others in the game, which already helps the ability stand out. The Angel also actively chases enemies, making it hard for them to avoid any of her attacks, and more often than not, she'll get at least 1 attack in on a target. Again, this ability causes damage amp, which is great, and for those of you that engage in PvP, especially on a 4-person server, the Fallen Angel does work in close quarters, such as inside a castle. It's a great ability. It just sucks that you only get it after defeating the final boss. That doesn't take away from its potency, just a reflection, and of course, Summon Fallen Angel gets an A rank. The second Unholy ultimate and final ability in the tree is Volatile Arachnid. When cast, this summons spiderlings that chase down your enemies and explode when nearby, dealing 100% magic damage. The explosion also spawns a toxic fume that deals 20% magic damage every 0.8 seconds, while also slowing enemies by 25%. To get Volatile Arachnid, you need to defeat the V-Blood unit Ungora the Spider Queen at the end of the Spider Cave in the Cursed Forest. Volatile Arachnid sounds pretty awesome. You get 3 charges of exploding spiders that you can use to deal decent AoE ticking damage, and that sounds like a winner. The only real issue is that these spiders are actually pretty easy to avoid, and that makes the ability less viable in all situations across the PvE and PvP spectrum. What's good is the damage and the lingering effects, which makes a noticeable impact in PvE play, but in PvP situations the ability just doesn't perform. Again, if a target is stunned or incapacitated, that's a different story, but if you're going toe-to-toe with some really talented brawlers, then the ability loses its punch. Sadly, there's not much more to say on the topic. It's a middle-of-the-road average ability, which is why Volatile Arachnid is getting a C rank. We hope you guys enjoyed our rankings of the Unholy abilities in VRising. If you have any questions or want to share your rankings of the Unholy abilities, you know what to do. Leave us a comment down below and we'll do our best to get back to you. Of course, if you did like this video and you want us to continue on with the ranking series, we need your help. Hit that thumbs up and consider subscribing. It's still the single best way to help channels like ours reach new audiences. If you're interested in joining our VRising private server, consider joining us on Discord. We've got a small PvP server with 2x resources set up for anyone to use. Just check out the link below to join today. Finally, if you like everything we're doing here on the channel and you want to support us even more, consider becoming a member. For just a few bucks, you're helping Livin and I achieve our dreams of becoming full-time content creators. Check out the join button below to learn more. My name is Codiak, and from everyone here at Legacy Gaming, thanks for watching, and play on.